Good afternoon and welcome to the 2019 Jewish American Heritage Month celebration. I'm Ezra Friedlander and I will be introducing Greg Rosenbaum, our chairman, our MC. Today's luncheon features our extraordinary guest of honor, Harley Lippman. And with that, I give you our MC, Greg Rosenbaum.
Thank you all for being here. This is the 14th year in which Jewish American Heritage Month has been proclaimed after an act of Congress and proclamations each year by the presidents of the United States. At all of your places, you have a brochure, which is an insert to the regular publication of the National Museum of American Jewish History in honor of Jewish American Heritage Month. It notes the theme for this year's Jewish American Heritage Month being American Jewish illustrators. But most important is the information on the very last page, titled Know the Facts, which notes that, encouraged by a bipartisan effort led by Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Senator Arlen Specter of blessed memory, President George W. Bush proclaimed in 2006 that May would be Jewish American Heritage Month. Jewish American Heritage Month has been established by presidential proclamation every year since. Jewish American Heritage Month's goal is to promote awareness of Jewish contributions to American history, heritage, and culture in many forms. Our honoree today embodies those principles. He has led by example. He has been concerned throughout his life with issues of Jewish culture, not only in the United States, but abroad. And it is wonderful that we are all gathered here today to celebrate Jewish American Heritage Month and honor Harley Lippman. We have a very full agenda today, so I'm going to try to get through it without going so fast that you can't understand me. But as is always the case here in the Capitol, we have a number of senators and representatives who are scheduled to address us, and they will come and go as their schedules allow. I do notice that our first senatorial guest has arrived, is Senator Jackie Rosen from Nevada. Senator Rosen is the junior senator from Nevada. She is the newest Jewish member of the United States Senate, having won her seat in 2018. Her election is historic, not only due to her religion, but because it made Nevada the 7th state in the history of the Senate to have 2 women serving simultaneously as its senators. Senator Rosen previously served in the U.S. House of Representatives from Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. As the first member of her family to graduate from college, Senator Rosen worked 2 jobs while a student, including as a waitress at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. She has an undergraduate degree from the University of Minnesota and later earned an associate's degree in computing and information technology from what is now the College of Southern Nevada. Senator Rosen is a member of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, Commerce, Small Business, Homeland Security, and the Special Committee on Aging. Unique among candidates for federal office, in my memory, Senator Rosen served as the president of her congregation, Ner Tamid, in Henderson, Nevada. I have kidded her in the past as having won all 3 elections in her life, 1 to the House of Representatives, 1 to the United States Senate, and 1 as synagogue president. And I have noted that the synagogue presidential campaign was probably the toughest of her entire career. It is a pleasure to have her join us for her first Jewish American Heritage celebration on Capitol Hill as a member of the United States Senate, Senator Jackie Rosen.
I can tell you I'm with Mishpucha today, right? I can say that here in the Capitol. And just so happy to be here for Harley, for everyone here, and so proud to represent the great state of Nevada. And honestly, I am the third Jewish woman to be in the United States Senate. Think about that. Only 50-some women overall in the Senate, and the third Jewish woman. And I think that's something to be very proud of. And of course, I am the only former synagogue president. I was brave enough to do that. Like you said, this is easy. So there you go. But I am so proud to stand with all of you to celebrate Jewish American heritage and to recognize the progress that we as Jewish people have made here in America, and we're going to continue to make. And we know, unfortunately, there's one issue that has always impeded our progress, threatens us in so many ways around this world, and that's the alarming rise of anti-Semitism in our country. This year, the Anti-Defamation League published a report which found 2018 is the third highest year on record for anti-Semitic acts and hate crimes since ADL started tracking them. We've seen misguided and troubling comments from some who we might otherwise consider our allies. And we've seen this on the news, and unfortunately, some of us have seen this in our communities. From Pittsburgh to Poway, Jewish Americans were taken from us while in the act of prayer. May the memories of those whose lives were taken before us be for a blessing. Because hate is unacceptable, my friends, and it's something we must call out, and it's something we must confront head on. And we have an obligation, a moral obligation, to put a stop to this trend, to stand up against bigotry and anti-Semitism wherever it rears its ugly head, left, right, or center. Last year, as a bipartisan member of the House of Representatives, I was part of the bipartisan task force to end anti-Semitism. I fought to ensure the State Department appointed a special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, and I am proud to say that he was sworn in last month. In my first month in the Senate, I helped reintroduce a bipartisan bill to upgrade that special envoy to an ambassador. We're going to mandate the position. That position was held vacant for 2 years, and those 2 years of an empty slot were critical. We could have been fighting back. So these are challenging times, but in great darkness, we must band together and hold up our sources of light. I was president of Congregation Ner Tamid. We know that means the eternal light. And so for nearly a decade, members of Congress and the Jewish community, they gather. Each May, we gather together to recognize, celebrate, and honor the contributions and accomplishments of Jewish Americans across our country. And standing with you all here today, I believe it is so important that we continue to stand up, to not be afraid, to come together, to recognize our people and our culture. And today, we're going to do just that by honoring one of our own, someone whose home I've been able to be at dinner with, who I've gotten a chance to know. We're going to honor Harley Lippman. He has made his own contributions to the fields of business, technology, philanthropy, and Jewish American history. And I'm pleased to say that besides from being Jewish, Harley and I share the IT background, as I'm also, not besides the former synagogue president, the only former computer programmer in the Senate. So we have those things in common before myself coming to Congress. But Harley started his own IT company. Later, he launched Genesis 10, an IT staffing firm that has employed thousands of people. But equally as impressive as his business success is his commitment to his family. I see them over here, his commitment to philanthropy. Harley is the sole financial supporter of an orphanage in Cambodia and has been for the past 17 years. He's responsible for all the children's needs: food, clothing, supervision, education. He's put several of them through college and more on the way. That's just a small example of the tzedakah that he does, not just here, but around the world. During the Nazi era, thousands were killed and buried in unmarked mass graves throughout Poland. For the past 10 years, Harley has undertaken the challenge of finding these mass graves to give the final mitzvah, the highest form of mitzvah we can do for someone is to bury them and say Kaddish. We know that in this room. He is the only financial supporter of a project that does this and erects a memorial plaque. So in their death, these souls receive the dignity, the Jewish dignity, and funeral that they deserve. He's active in the world of higher education. He sits on the board of directors at Yale Business School. Let me tell you, do you have time? What do you do in your spare time? You're so very busy, I'm telling you. He does everything he can. He's personally involved in foreign relations. He has helped pass the Taylor Force Act. His opinion is sought after by both conservative and liberal media outlets because what he says matters, what he does counts, and we are so very grateful to have him in our midst. USA Today ranked him as the 29th best CEO in America today out of the Fortune 500. And he does all this, besides running a thriving tech company, devoting time to his family and his community. And he is so deserving of this award. And so for me, there's a special place in my heart. Part of the reason I ran for office is obviously because I believe in the Jewish principle of tikkun olam. And I think we can all clearly see that Harley is certainly doing his part to repair this world through his many acts of kindness and tzedakah. So what we need to do today is to remember. Jews, that's what we do. We remember and we tell the stories. That's what we do on our holidays. It's what we do each and every day. It's what we do here. We remember and we continue to hold these Jewish values, pass them from generation to generation, lador vador, in our hearts by encouraging those around us to repair the world and make it a better place to live for ourselves, for our children, each and every day. So ladies and gentlemen, I just give a hearty mazel tov today to our friend, Harley Lippman, on this great event.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. It was a privilege to have you join us. Our next speaker is Senator Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine is the junior senator from Virginia. He was elected to the Senate in 2012 and was re-elected in 2018. Prior to serving in the Senate, Senator Kaine was first elected to office as a Richmond City Councilor. He went on to be mayor of Richmond, Virginia, lieutenant governor of Virginia, and governor of Virginia. He also, along the way, chaired the Democratic National Committee. In 2016, Senator Kaine was the Democratic nominee for Vice President of the United States. Senator Kaine was born in Minnesota and moved to the Kansas City area at the age of 2. His mother taught home economics, and his father was a small businessman. He joined the debate team, something near and dear to my heart, as some of you in the audience know, and then received his undergraduate degree from the University of Missouri. He began legal studies at Harvard Law School, but took a year off to assist Jesuit missionaries in Honduras run a school. Obviously, his commitment to public service and education was clear at that early time. Returning to Harvard, Senator Kaine received his law degree in 1983. He met his future wife, Ann Holton, at Harvard Law School, and after their wedding, they moved to her hometown of Richmond, Virginia. And as they say, the rest is history. In the Senate, Senator Kaine serves on the Armed Services, Foreign Relations, Budget, and Help committees. Some people who lose their campaigns for president or vice president simply slip from public life after the election. Not Senator Tim Kaine. While his accomplishments are enough for most people in a lifetime, his unwavering commitment to social justice and making people's lives better while ensuring a strong defense and robust diplomacy allowed him to jump right back into his work in the Senate. The nation should be thankful that he did. I am privileged to call him a good friend, Senator Tim Kaine.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much. I want to thank Greg for his kind introduction. And this is an annual. I come every year to the Jewish American Heritage Month commemoration. Sometimes I'm even the Senate sponsor of the room, which you have to have a sponsor. And Ezra worries us until we agree to get the sponsorship done. But I'm really, really happy to be here with you. I work on a number of committees, and the Senate work does focus on your committees that I think are pretty important to folks in the room. So I'm on Armed Services and Foreign Relations, the role of America in the world, the work that America does with our ally Israel, the broad issues that concern all of us every day, and we're living in a time of very, very significant security concerns. But I'm also on the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee, and my Jewish American leaders around Virginia have been incredibly active on all those issues as well. Education reforms and improvements, health care, the desire that all Americans should have health care and no one should go wanting. These are issues of deep importance to the community as well. But what I want to talk about today, just to pick up on my friend Jackie Rosen, is the anti-Semitism issue, because sadly, it's topical. Sadly, it's getting worse. Sadly, our communities in Virginia and elsewhere are under increasing threat. That as a practicing Catholic, somebody who cares deeply about my faith, I respond to other people in their own faith journeys and want them to be able to pursue them free from threat or fear or intimidation. Before I talk about anti-Semitism, though, I just want to commend you for recognizing Harley. The poster board out front is a pretty amazing recitation of how busy this guy is. He's been so successful professionally, but we all wake up every morning with the same opportunity to do something good for somebody else. And even if today didn't go well, we'll wake up tomorrow with an opportunity to do something good for somebody else. And Harley has availed himself of that opportunity through his service to educational institutions, through his connection with AIPAC, and through something that's sort of dear to my heart, because my public service journey was really inspired by a year working in the Third World with Jesuit missionaries in Honduras. The fact that Harley has paid particular attention to conditions in Cambodia, that is something that is really impressive to me, and I just hope all will recognize that. Because there are parts of the world that may not be in the news every day, or that the sort of man on the street may not know much about or may not talk much about. It's one thing to devote yourself to causes or concerns that are on the top of the mind or the front page for everybody, but it's another thing to devote yourself to causes and concerns that many may not know about. And Harley's work in Cambodia is an example of that. So Harley, thank you for your service to so many, and you're just the perfect person to be recognized today during this annual event. Look, on anti-Semitism, Virginia's got scar tissue. My friend Jake Rubin is the Hillel rabbi at the University of Virginia, and it was essentially during move-in weekend when his new students and their families from around the country came to Charlottesville in August of 2017 and were subjected to torch-bearing white supremacists, neo-Nazis, neo-Confederates, chanting slogans out of Nazi youth rallies like blood and soil and Jews will not replace us. I remember being interviewed during those days and having national media ask about the controversy about statues, and I said, this is not about Confederate statues. You do not have to pay homage to a Confederate statue by chanting slogans from Nazi youth rallies. This is about hatred and bigotry and murder. 2 state troopers were killed that day trying to provide order when their helicopter went down. I knew both of them. A third woman, Heather Heyer, a wonderful paralegal with a really inspiring life story in Charlottesville, was run down by a white supremacist who killed her and injured many, many others. That was anti-Semitism and bigotry right on our doorstep in an iconic place that was the home of one of our most iconic American political leaders during the generation of the framers. That was very shocking to the country, but it's not just that. It's the shootings in Pittsburgh. It's the shooting recently in California during worship services. It's the defacing of so many so many prominent institutions of concern to the Jewish community. Eileen Fillerkorn, who's the leader of the Democratic Party in our state General Assembly. Eileen, you and I, sadly, have been together on multiple occasions. Just at the Jewish Community Center in Northern Virginia has on multiple occasions been defaced. Bomb threats to the Gesher Day School in Northern Virginia. As I travel around the state, if I go into a Jewish community center, one of the first things I see is a security office and increasing security protocols every time I go. And so people feel a slight sense of intimidation or fear, even walking into a place to play basketball or to take an exercise class or go to the gym, much less to worship. This is a toxic poison that is increasing in our country and increasing in the world. We're not unique in this. The first bill that I introduced when I came back after being on the ticket in 2016 was a bill with Senator Rubio to equip the State Department with tools to battle anti-Semitism in Europe. But it was interesting, at that point in 2016, we were sort of looking at Europe and saying we have to do some things there. We got to look in the mirror about ourselves. So on Yom HaShoah, May 2, I introduced a resolution with Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz and I came into the Senate together. The similarities almost end there. There's a lot of things we don't agree on, but we've always gotten along well. And Senator Cruz approached me on the floor about a month ago and said, we ought to do an anti-Semitism resolution where the Senate condemns and commits to combating anti-Semitism, not in Europe, but right here in the United States. And I said, you're right, I want to work with you on this. This is something that we should do together. And just a little Senate story, as we're working through the drafting, look, there are things that Senator Cruz wanted to put in that bill that would be really appealing to Republicans. There are things that I wanted to put in the bill that would be really appealing to Democrats. But at one point along the way, as we were working on the drafting, we realized we could write a brochure bill that Republicans would love and Democrats wouldn't, or we could write a brochure bill that Democrats would love and Republicans wouldn't. But if we did that, we would demean the critical importance of trying to come together as Americans to condemn the ugliness of anti-Semitism. And so we basically, while reserving our own opinions about things, tried to find the overlap in the Venn diagram in condemning anti-Semitism in a way that groups of all kinds, individuals of all kinds, representatives from any party could get on board with. And I'm happy to say that on the day we introduced, with only a little bit of time to circulate it, we had a bipartisan group of 45 senators who were co-sponsors of the resolution, and the number is climbing. And I just want to read it to you. It's relatively brief. Senate Resolution 189. Condemning all forms of anti-Semitism, whereas anti-Semitism is a unique form of prejudice stretching back millennia that attacks the equal humanity of the Jewish people, whereas anti-Semitism has long perpetrated myths about Jews, including the Russian fabrication of the protocols of the Elders of Zion and the wide circulation of libelous falsehoods about the Jewish murder of infants. Whereas in its most extreme form, anti-Semitism aims at the physical destruction of the Jewish people, as seen in pogroms, forced conversions, and Nazi Germany's murder of over 6 million Jews. Whereas anti-Semitism has included attacks on the livelihood of Jews, including prohibitions on land ownership, campaigns to boycott, confiscate, or destroy Jewish businesses, and denial of the ability of Jews to practice certain professions. Whereas in the United States, Jews have suffered from systematic discrimination in the form of exclusion from home ownership in certain neighborhoods, prohibition from staying in certain hotels, restrictions upon memberships in private clubs and other associations, limitations upon admission to certain educational institutions, and other barriers to equal justice under the law. Whereas in the United States, Jews have faced and continue to face false accusations of divided loyalty between the United States and Israel, false claims that they purchased political power with money, and false accusations about control of the financial system, along with other negative stereotypes. And whereas Jews are the targets of the majority of hate crimes committed in the United States against any religious group, including attacks on houses of worship and Jewish community centers, now therefore be it resolved that the United States Senate condemns and commits to combating all forms of anti-Semitism. That's Senate Resolution 189, and again, I'm proud that Senator Rosen was an original co-sponsor, and I'm proud that two people who are as different in our political orientations as Ted Cruz and me decided that of all the things that we could work on together, and frankly, I can't remember another bill that we've introduced together, of all the things that we would work on together, this would be the bill. But this is the bill because it's needed at this particular moment in time. Thank you for being such great pillars of your community. Look forward to more good work together. Appreciate it.
Can we just do a little photo of standing in?
Oh, sure. Just stand right here.
Just stand here with the chair.
Right here?
Yeah, just stand up to your Holly, stand up.
You guys used to following Ezra? Just doing whatever he says.
Everyone look at the camera. You can stand up, Emil. Emil, you can stand up. Everyone at the table, just stand up. Okay, just look.
Okay.
Perfect.
Have a wonderful lunch. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
always
you, Senator.
Sometimes this event becomes the world's longest photo op. I have been in Washington for a number of years. I always look for some sort of common thread where we can bring people of diverse views together. So as Senator Kaine told the story about co-sponsoring the resolution with Senator Cruz, I looked for what commonality they had, and to me it was obvious. Both were members of their school's debate teams. And that is probably why Senator Kaine and Senator Cruz were able to discuss this issue and come up with the resolution, and for that we're grateful. Before we have another senator speak, I think it's time at the program that we have Harley Lippman give his own words of welcome. We'll hear from him in length later in the program after we've had an opportunity to have several senators and representatives talk about his life and his contributions to America. But for now, Harley, would you please come up here and give your words of welcome to this event?
Well, first off, I naturally have to thank everyone for coming here. Even though the invites went out, I didn't think anybody would show up. It's not a wedding, it's not a funeral, but it feels good to see everybody here, and I thank all my friends for traveling from far away to make it. When Senator Rosen said to me, I don't know how he does everything, what comes to mind is my standard line, which is that I disappoint everyone equally. So it's a lot to juggle, and it's not easy. It's not an easy challenge, but it's important work. So what I was advised to talk about was not anything that would be controversial. Don't bring up Democrats, Republicans. Don't even bring up Israel. Speak to what this day is and what this month represents. And I think, when I think about it, being an American Jew or being a Jewish American, what is the essence of that, and why is this a great country for American Jews? I think because in this country you could be completely Jewish and be completely American, and they're compatible. You could say the same about Irish Americans who may want to protest what the British are doing and still be completely Irish, or Italians who have a great attraction and love for Italy. So that's a beautiful part of this country. And you know, when you think historically about the contributions Jews have made, you just go to Wikipedia, the list is endless. But I think, you know, one that jumps to mind is, because a lot of people don't know about it, is Commodore Levy, who eliminated corporal punishment in the Navy in the 1840s, beginning the movement to do good in the world, if you will, and to speak of human rights and to think about others. And then, of course, we all know the others. There's a long list: Jonas Salk, Albert Einstein, and so on. And then I think, lastly, I think the tone was really set by George Washington, who in 1790 addressed the Jewish community in Rhode Island in a synagogue there. And he said, "You are all welcome, that you are all welcome to enjoy and celebrate your religion free of prejudice and discrimination." He said specifically, we won't countenance any bigotry, and we won't allow any persecution. And that was even before Napoleon came out with his emancipation in France. So it really spoke to the best of America: forward thinking, tolerance, openness, acceptance, empathy, compassion. And so it just makes me so proud to be an American Jew and a Jewish American. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the theme of this year's Jewish American Heritage Month is American Jewish Illustrators. I tried to think of a way to tie our honoree, Harley Lippman, and the theme of American Jewish Illustrators together, and then it hit me. Some of the greatest Jewish illustrators were the creators of our comic book and now TV and movie superstars, superheroes, Batman, Superman, the whole Marvel universe were all created by American Jews. And then I looked at some videos of the good work that Harley Lippman is doing around the world. And I realized that Harley is a modern-day superhero, here in the flesh, not as an illustration. But that link is the one that I think ties this event together. And again, I want to thank you for your remarks. We'll hear from you more later in the program, but thank you so much for being with us. I noted also at the outset that President Trump had followed a long line of other presidents in declaring May Jewish American Heritage Month. We are honored today to have with us a representative of the administration, the Honorable David F. Eisner. David Eisner is the Assistant Secretary for Management in the United States Department of the Treasury. Prior to his appointment in April 2018, he spent 30 years as a Wall Street executive and technology entrepreneur and investor. He was the founder, president, and CEO of The Markets, LLC, a software and financial data company from its founding in 2000 until its sale to McGraw-Hill in 2011. From 1992 through 1998, after several years as an investment banker, David was named Executive Vice President, Office of the Chairman of Jefferies Group, Inc. And while he will not remember this, Jefferies took one of my companies public in that time period. So I am grateful to you for that. Thank you. Jefferies, under his guidance, grew from a market capitalization of $70 million to $1.5 billion. And prior to his government service, he was the executive chairman of CompliSci, a leading financial services compliance software company. David has served in the leadership of several major Jewish organizations. He has been president of JTA/70 Faces Media, a multi-brand Jewish digital media enterprise with over 1 million monthly readers. He's been president of the Or Torah Stone Institutions of Israel, a large network of schools and outreach programs headed by Rabbi Shlomo Rishkin. He's been president of the Board of Jewish Education of New York, and which serves over 150,000 children in 300 schools in the New York area. Before moving to Washington, David lived in New York City and Westport, Connecticut with his wife, Karen. He has two sons, Josh, 29, and Jason, 25, both of whom have attended the Ramaz School in New York City. It is my great honor to introduce Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, David Eisner. What's the name of your company? What's the name of your company? Oh, tell us which name.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you to my mother for sending it to you. And thank you for the opportunity to say a few words of welcome to this esteemed gathering. Today, when we mark and celebrate Jewish American Heritage Month, I bring greetings to you from the President of the United States and the Secretary of the Treasury, whom I have the honor to serve. I also appreciate, Ezra, you scheduling this event very conveniently for me, as Secretary Mnuchin testified before the Senate Financial Services Appropriations Committee this morning, and so I was already here with him on Capitol Hill. I wish special mazel tov to Harley, and I wanted to, also a presidential appointee, I wanted to just read the President's proclamation of Jewish American Heritage Month. As we observe Jewish American Heritage Month, our nation celebrates nearly 4,000 years of Jewish history and honors the numerous contributions of Jewish Americans to our country and the world. Rabbi Akiva, a great Jewish scholar, declared that a central principle of the Torah is to love thy neighbor as thyself. Jewish Americans have repeatedly demonstrated their dedication to this commandment, helping the downtrodden and pursue justice, sanctifying the name of God, and embodying the best of America. I stand before you as a proud Jewish American who walks in the giant footsteps of generations of American Jews who have served in government and otherwise contributed so meaningfully to the culture and fabric of American life for over 350 years. I also stand before you as a grateful citizen of the nation that has welcomed and embraced its Jews like no other diaspora nation in the history of the world. As a Pittsburgh native, and as one who returned there for a day following the Tree of Life shooting to make 8 Shiva visits to the families of its victims, I'm keenly aware of the challenges that our community and our nation faces from extreme elements on both the right and the left. Challenges that we were once again reminded of 2 weeks ago in Poway on the last day of Pesach. But daily, I recall with pride and confidence the most forceful words ever spoken by a non-Jewish leader of a nation in solidarity with the Jewish people. On Saturday, October 27th, the evening following the Pittsburgh shooting, referring to the Jewish people, President Trump proclaimed, "This evil, anti-Semitic attack is an assault on all of us. It's an assault on humanity. And to those seeking the destruction of the Jews, we will seek their destruction." I was honored as a young man in 1975 and 1976 to work for the late great senator from the state of Washington, Senator Henry M. Scoop Jackson, who I know many of you will remember as a great, great friend of our people and of the state of Israel. I was inspired to public service in those years by witnessing the power that government had to improve the lives of millions of people in America and around the world. I remain as idealistic today as I was in those years, deeply grateful for the welcome and opportunities this country has given to Jews for hundreds of years, and deeply awed by the contributions we have made to the prosperity and culture of this great nation. Mazel tov again to Harley Lippman, our guest of honor on his well-deserved recognition, and thank you all for attending today.
You know, it's a great American tradition to tell our kids that in America you can grow up to be anything you want to be. As Jews in America, we get to tell our children that being Jewish is not an impediment to growing up to being anything you want to be. When we tell our sons that they can rise high in the government of the United States, we have a concrete example right here in Secretary Eisner. When we tell our daughters that being Jewish in America is not a limitation and they can be anything they want to be, I want to point out in the audience Delegate Eileen Fillercorn, who is the minority leader in the Virginia House of Delegates, and depending on election results this year, could rise to be the Speaker of the House in the Commonwealth of Virginia. As a Jewish woman. At this time, it is an honor for me to introduce someone I consider to be a very dear friend, Senator Sherrod Brown, from my home state of Ohio. He gets applause, he doesn't even have to speak. Senator Brown is the senior senator from Ohio. He was elected to the Senate in 2006, re-elected in 2012, and re-elected again in 2018. Prior to his election to the Senate, he represented Ohio's 13th Congressional District in the House of Representatives. He earned his undergraduate degree from Yale and a Master of Arts and a Master of Public Administration degrees from The Ohio State University. Senator Brown is married to a Pulitzer Prize-winning former newspaper journalist and author and is a grandfather of 7. He serves as the ranking member on the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. He also serves on Senate committees on Finance, Veterans Affairs, and Agriculture. I will repeat today something that I say every time I have the good fortune to introduce Senator Brown. If there is a more effective voice in the United States Senate for the least fortunate among us than Senator Sherrod Brown, I do not know who that is. My good friend and fellow diehard Cleveland Indians fan, Senator Sherrod Brown.
Greg, thank you. It's good to be with you here again today, and thanks for joining us. And I'm so appreciative of Greg. I just love him and Marty. They are two of the most kind, decent people I know, and they take so importantly their faith and their call to justice and their activism. So thank you for all that. Harley, thank you. Congratulations to you. The work you do, what you're doing with mass graves now in Central and Eastern Europe is so important. And thank you for never letting people forget, and that's one of the best ways to do it. Thank you for that. You were in I asked Harley, he said nobody else did this. You were in the Kennedy caucus room, and this room has one of the most interesting histories of any room in the United States Capitol. This room was the site of the Titanic hearings many years ago. It was the site of, it was where John F. Kennedy announced for president, where Robert F. Kennedy announced for president. This was the site for the McCarthy hearings, this room. It was the site for the Watergate hearings. And it was the room, the only time I've played any role in this room other than speaking with Greg, is it's the room where we wrote the Affordable Care Act, the so-called Obamacare. So there have been a lot of great moments in this history, and it really mattered. I want to do one other introduction of a friend of mine, and Rabbi Gary Zola, my red-haired friend at the end of the table. Rabbi Zola is, and I apologize for doing this again, he's heard me do this before, but he is the archivist at the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. As you know, Cincinnati was the birthplace of Reform Judaism. Cincinnati at one point, way before Rabbi Zola's in my time, was the second largest concentration of the second largest group of Jewish citizens living in the country. And Cincinnati has a wonderfully proud tradition, in part because of the Hebrew Union College and Rabbi Isaac Wise. But what I was going to say, and this sounds like a commercial, but one of the most interesting books I've read, and illuminating books I've read, several years ago, 10 years ago you wrote it, when it came out. It's called the book is named, They Called Him Rabbi Abraham. And it was it's a 400 and some page book about the ties that Abraham Lincoln had to the Jewish community, how he stopped Christianity from being the national religion, how he he was the first one to begin the practice of Jewish chaplains in our armed services and a number of other things. So anyway, thank you. Good to see you again, Rabbi Zoll. I will say only a couple of words. I met, just substantive words, I met Rabbi Zolla through a woman named Susanna Heschel. Our first, or actually it was the other way around, I guess. I met Susanna Heschel through Rabbi Zolla. Susanna Heschel is the daughter of Abraham Joshua Heschel. And Abraham Joshua Heschel got his start he came to the New World. He left, I think, Berlin. He left Berlin to come to Cincinnati for a year at the Hebrew Union College. A very different culture, a very different faith for him as an Orthodox rabbi in Central Europe. And came there in 1940, if I remember the year right. And Rabbi Heschel said, Cincinnati, Ohio, and the United States of America saved my life, which I assume surely it did. And he began becoming one of the best known rabbis in American history when he went on to New York and did so much with his faith there, and then did so much in the civil rights movement, especially with Dr. King. But one of the things Rabbi Heschel said, indifference to evil is worse than evil itself, that in a free society some are guilty but all are responsible. That's why it's so important that all of us, that all of you, including me in our Judeo-Christian faith, in tradition, and your Jewish faith and my Christian faith, that we always, if possible, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And that means, it means doing what so many Jews in my state do to help those that don't have the good fortune, some of the good fortune in life that some of us do, to talk about what Greg talked about. It also means afflicting the comfortable. It means calling out the President of the United States when he engages in his racist behavior. It means calling out any public official when they play anti-Semitism and racism, and even so when they don't stand up, whether it's Charlottesville or whether it's a church bombing or whether it's murder in a temple or anything else, that it's incumbent upon all of us as elected officials and all of you as community leaders to always call out anti-Semitism and always call out racism. The frequency of incidents in this country has exploded in the last 3 years. I don't put it all at the feet of the White House. I put a lot of it there, but it's all of us standing up and saying stop and no more of this when it comes to racism and sexism and misanthropy and misogyny and anti-Semitism in this country. That's the role all of us can play. I ask your help to continue to do that. Thank you so much.
Representative Carolyn Maloney serves New York's 12th Congressional District, which includes most of Manhattan's East Side, Astoria, and Long Island City and Queens, Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and Roosevelt Island. She was first elected to the House in 1992. Prior to that, she served as a member of the New York City Council from 1983 to 1992. She's originally from Greensboro, North Carolina, and graduated from Greensboro College. She serves as vice chair of the Joint Economic Committee in the United States Congress. It is a pleasure to introduce to you Representative Carolyn Maloney.
Thank you so much, and I am so pleased that you have chosen to honor my good friend Harley Lippman and his wife Marie, also my very good friend, during Jewish American Heritage Month, and welcome all of you to our Capitol. Harley has really earned this honor. He is an extraordinary man who cares deeply about the Jewish community and combating anti-Semitism. He is a great businessman who created a great company that happens to be located in the district I represent, Genesis 10, which offers high-tech staffing and solutions to companies with more than 2,000 employees around the country. Harley helps companies solve problems and find talent to address their needs. And USA Today ranked Harley among the top 30 CEOs in America of large companies, including the Fortune 500. That's quite an achievement. But not content with providing a great product, Harley has devoted himself to helping others. He has a great heart and incredible generosity. Harley is the sole founder and funder of an orphanage in Cambodia. And while his concerns for humanity is boundless, one area where Harley has made a unique and lasting contribution is in the memorialization of the Jewish community that was destroyed by the Nazis. With singular purpose and great dedication, Harley has gone about finding unknown graves and restoring historic Jewish grave sites. At my urging, Speaker Pelosi appointed Harley to the Commission for Historical Preservation, which is involved in restoring desecrated cemeteries in Eastern Europe. And the Speaker sends her best wishes and applauds this great honor for you. She wishes she could be here. She's in congressional meetings. It is a credit to Harley, his enthusiasm and dedication, that he has been reappointed by both Republican and Democratic administrations. And Harley has been the sole funder of an effort to find mass graves in Poland, sites where Jews were slaughtered by the Nazis and have been buried. So far, his team has found 52 sites and discovered them for the first time. And when he finds a site, he ensures that a memorial plaque is erected to honor the victims. He also arranges for a service with the chief rabbi of Poland, a Catholic priest, and a Protestant minister, and invites school children to participate. It's a meaningful opportunity to remind people of the Jews who perished, the tremendous loss in culture and humanity for Poland, the brutality of the Nazis, and the success of the Jewish community that survived. We owe him a great debt for making sure that we never forget those who were lost. Harley is a strong defender of Israel, and in the effort to stop terrorism, he was active in the effort to pass the Taylor Force Act, which halts funding to Palestinians as long as they are paying stipends to terrorists. Harley has been a leader of a host of organizations, from the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, an organization founded by Elie Wiesel, while he currently serves as president to the American-Israel Friendship League and American Jewish Congress. I am so proud of Harley and all that he has accomplished, and I am so pleased to be here to congratulate him and Marie on receiving this recognition. He truly deserves it. And because I would like to make sure that his deeds are recognized, I have written a statement of remarks celebrating his achievements. It will go into the congressional record today and become part of the history of our great country. I am so proud to call him our friend. Thank you for honoring him. He deserves it, and thank you for being here. Thank you. Congratulations on your service. I'm working with you in Treasury, right?
You too? Yeah. I'll join you here, okay.
Look at the guy in the black shirt.
Thank you, Representative Maloney. It is my honor to next introduce Representative Tom Suozzi, who serves New York's 3rd Congressional District. First elected in 2016, he was reelected in 2018. Prior to that, he served as county executive of Nassau County from 2002 to 2009, and before that, he was mayor of Glen Cove, New York for 4 terms. Representative Suozzi has an undergraduate degree from Boston College and a law degree from Fordham University. He is a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, where, as we all know, all of the tax laws and revenue laws of the country are written. It is my honor to introduce Representative Tom Suozzi of New York.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone here. Bruchim Abayim. That was for you, Rabbi. I'm really so happy to be here with you today to celebrate Jewish Heritage Month, but I want you to please join me in saying, let's hear it for Harley Lippman. I've known Harley for almost 20 years. He's a great friend. He's a wonderful person. And, you know, we face some very tough times in our country right now where everybody's just so divided. We spend all of our time yelling and screaming at each other, Democrats and Republicans, people that are different from each other. And Harley's one of those people that is great at bringing other people together. He brings people that are very, very disparate in their personalities, in their backgrounds, in their ethnicities, in their religions, in their points of view, and tries to get people to actually communicate with each other. And that's the big problem we face in our country today. Our big problem is that, you know, we're all in this together. And everybody wants to divide us over petty things. And I've told Harley before in the past, you know, before I was on Ways and Means, I was on the Armed Services and the Foreign Affairs Committee. And it's such a tremendous honor. I went to Afghanistan a couple times, meet with the generals and the troops and the diplomats. I went to I went to South Korea. I didn't go to North Korea. I went to South Korea. I went to Jordan and the UAE and Kuwait, and of course to Israel. And you know, this is serious business. This is life and death business. And it's not just stuff that's going on in the rest of the world, it's right here at home with issues like healthcare and immigration and the problems we're facing today with so much hate and so much violence and anti-Semitism. This is serious business. And politics has gotten so small and so petty and so cynical. And Harley is one of those people that reminds us how serious this business is. We can't let it be these small, petty attacks, partisan, angry. He tries to get us to lift up the conversation and make it a little bit more noble, a little bit more recognizing how important this conversation is. The work that he does with AIPAC to encourage American-Israel relations. The work that he's done, you've read the bio, you saw all those different things in the bio, I'm sure other people have mentioned it already. He's done so many things to help so many people, and I'm personally grateful to him for the help that he's given me throughout my career over the past 20 years. So thank you for honoring him. Thank you for being here together today. And let's keep on moving forward together and lift this country up and lift the world up by living up to the ideals that we stand for. Remember that, you know, we send people off to foreign countries throughout our history in wars and ask young men and women to give their lives on behalf of what? Freedom and democracy. And freedom and democracy is nothing more than politics and government. And the best way to honor them is to do what Harley does, to try to lift up the conversation and make it a little bit more serious, recognizing the important work we have to do together, despite the small differences we have. Thank you very much, everyone. Toda rabba lachem. Oh, great. Yeah, Howard. He's still rebuilding his house.
Thank you very much, Representative Suozzi. Our next guest is Senator Bob Menendez, the senior senator from New Jersey. He was appointed to fill an unexpired term in the Senate in early 2006, then won his first term for a full term later that year. He was reelected in 2012 and again in 2018. Prior to serving in the U.S. Senate, Senator Menendez was a member of the United States House of Representatives from 1993 to 2006. He was the youngest person ever elected to the Union City, New Jersey Board of Education at the age of 20 and was elected mayor of Union City, a member of the New Jersey General Assembly, and a member of the New Jersey Senate before seeking federal office. Obviously, born to public service, Senator Bob Menendez received his undergraduate degree from St. Peter's College and a law degree from Rutgers. He serves on the Senate Committees on Banking, Finance, and Foreign Relations, where he is the ranking member. In past Senates, he has served as chair of the Committee on foreign relations, where he has a significant impact on all aspects of United States foreign policy. Senator Menendez has, throughout his career, been a supporter of Jewish Americans and the issues about which they care. It is my privilege to introduce Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey.
Shalom, everyone. Thank you very much for that gracious introduction. Let me thank the Jewish American Heritage Month Coalition for bringing us together today. And as I look around the room, I see so many friends from across the nation and, of course, from the great state of New Jersey. And every year, I'm thrilled to join all of you to celebrate the remarkable contributions of Jewish Americans throughout our history, from the Jewish immigrants who first arrived here in the 1600s, to the members of our armed services who have fought for our freedom and our values century after century, to the Jewish thinkers, artists, and scientists who have enriched our culture, our economy, and our politics. Of course, Jewish American Heritage Month is as much about the present as it is about the past, and every year I've been inspired by the incredible Jewish leaders recognized during this luncheon. Before I talk about one of those, I just want to say I, as a member of the Senate, and before that the House Foreign Relations Committee doing foreign policy for 27 years, I have always believed that the United States must have a strong, unwavering relationship with the State of Israel, the one true democracy in a sea of autocracy, a major security ally of the United States, a major trading partner of the United States. And when Israel is strong, we are strong. When Israel is safe, we are safe. And so that is what's guided me for 27 years. But I am thrilled in that context to be here today to honor someone who you're all recognizing, a great Jewish American leader, a philanthropist, an activist who I'm proud to call my dear friend, Harley Lippman. You know, I have come to know after 45 years of public life that there are two types of people in this world. There are those people who go through life only looking out for themselves. And then there are those who feel no responsibility to make the world a better place. Then there are those people who always look beyond themselves, who seek to alleviate suffering and injustice, those who embody the spirit of Tikkun Olam each and every day. Harley Lippman is truly one of those people. As the CEO of the technology staffing and services company Genesis 10, Harley deserves every ounce of success he's earned. But what I admire about him is not his success in the business world. What I admire about him, what I've come to know about him over well over a decade, as I admire many others in the Jewish community, is that his views on success is an opportunity to give back to the world. As a member of the U.S. Commission for the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad, Harley has led efforts to restore desecrated Jewish cemeteries across Europe and bring peace and dignity to the mass graves of persecuted Jews during the pogroms and the Holocaust. In Cambodia, when Harley talks to me about some of the work that he does with such passion, he's worked on not only to care for some of the world's most vulnerable orphaned children, but also strive to end the cycle of poverty by teaching them the skills that they need to succeed. And of course, many of us know Harley from his work championing U.S.-Israel relationships and combating anti-Semitism globally. And I think we can all agree, as the president of the Institute of the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, Harley's efforts to combat anti-Semitism through education and understanding couldn't be more urgent. And I appreciate that when I have members, heads of state, that come to visit us privately in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and when they come from a country that has a rising tide of anti-Semitism, a tide that I regretfully see even in our own country, I challenge them as to what are you doing about the rising tide of anti-Semitism in your country? How are you speaking out? How are you using the position of your power? Harley's efforts in this regard has been extraordinary as he has traveled the world, in often creating an overture and an openness to those who may not normally be considered an ally. In recent years, we've seen this anti-Semitism and hatred on the rise. We've seen it in the desecration of Jewish cemeteries in Philadelphia, and earlier this month on the defaced homes of Jews in Jackson, New Jersey. We've heard it in the chants of white nationalists in Charlottesville and the public squares of Europe. And we've witnessed the horrific consequences of hatred turned to violence in Pittsburgh and Poway. In these most turbulent times, we must remember the words spoken by a great civil rights leader, the Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who once said, "Few are guilty, but all are responsible." In other words, if we want a more peaceful, more understanding, more tolerant world, we have to build it ourselves. In that respect, we cannot rely on those who speak in the language of hate or carry out violence in the name of hate. All of us have a responsibility to condemn anti-Semitism and bigotry, whether it is in the form of anti-Israel bias on the world stage or acts of terror against Jews here at home. We cannot be complacent, and we cannot be silent. For apathy and silence are hatred's greatest allies, and we all have a responsibility to build a world where hatred has no home. I think of Harley, and in his work every day, quietly but determined, he seeks to build a world in which that type of hatred no longer exists. During Jewish American Heritage Month, we hope that by celebrating the contributions of Jewish leaders like Harley Lippman, philanthropists, artists, and innovators, we may cast light into the darkness and build a brighter future for all. And I couldn't think of someone more devoted to that mission and more deserving of this honor than my friend Harley Lippman. Congratulations, Harley, and I think it is a moment to present you with the recognition you so rightfully deserve.
We're going to ask for members of the head table to stand alongside the senator and Harley. Everyone, we're going to ask for Marie. Hold on. Perfect. Okay, let's move over. Let's get some space right here. Rabbi, everyone please look at the camera. Everybody over here. 1, 2. Number 2. Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you. Thank you. What we do this time.
I got it. Now go
Thank you, Senator Menendez. We're going to move quickly along here because our next two speakers are members of the House of Representatives and there are votes scheduled at 1:30. So at this time, it is my honor to introduce Representative Joseph P. Kennedy III. We do not need to look very far from our own tables today to understand where our next speaker got his interest in public service. In this very room, Joe Kennedy's grandfather and 2 great-uncles announced their presidential candidacies. While I am certain that everyone in this room knows of the Senate service of 3 brothers, John, Robert, and Edward Kennedy, they may not know that Representative Kennedy's great-grandfather and namesake, Joseph P. Kennedy, served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Kingdom and as the first commissioner of the Securities and Exchange Commission. His great-great-grandfather, on his mother's side, John F. Fitzgerald, served in the House of Representatives and as mayor of Boston. And of course, his father served in the House of Representatives. That's a family totally dedicated to public service. Prior to running for Congress, Joe attended Stanford University, where he studied management science and engineering. After graduation, he joined the Peace Corps, one of his great uncle's innovations in government, working primarily in the Dominican Republic. He returned home to earn his law degree from Harvard Law School, where he and my son were classmates. Joe had not been in office for more than 6 weeks when I first asked him to address a crowd of Jewish Americans. He agreed to do that despite his short tenure in the House, but he thrilled the audience with his knowledge of the subject and his clear concern of issues related to the American Jewish community. Representative Kennedy serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House, and he represents the district with the largest Jewish population outside of New York, Florida, and California, with over 11% of his constituents being Jewish Americans. As such, he is no stranger to Jewish American heritage. Representative Joe Kennedy.
Greg, thank you, as always, for the extraordinarily kind introduction. Thank you, most importantly, for your friendship from the very first days of my very first campaign and every single day thereon through. I'm grateful to have it and grateful for it. The one thing I wanted to mention just very briefly, they have unfortunately moved up that vote schedule to between 1 and 1:15 for votes being called, and it's 1:11. So given the fact that Debbie is also up right, but Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz is up behind me, I'm going to try to keep these remarks short so we can both get in before we have to run. But let me just say briefly then, one, to Greg, thank you. Two, to this organization, thank you. Thank you for, once again, bringing everybody together. Thank you for what you stand for. Thank you for what you believe in. Thank you for making sure that we as not just a community, but as a government, as a country, recognize the contribution of Jewish Americans, the heritage that you have, and how that plays out every single day. And I cannot think of a better example for recognition today than Harley Lippman. You have heard I have the extraordinary honor of not being the first in your program and of also not being the last in your program. You have heard an awful lot about Harley. You don't need to hear it all once again from me, but let me just say from your contributions domestically, your contributions to education, your contributions in Cambodia, your contributions in Poland, your contributions around the world and in every corner of it, set an example for all of us to follow about what it means to not only be a true public servant, but what it means to take the word heritage and understand what that meant in terms of where we come from, how we are raised, the legacy of those who came before, but what it means also into the formation of an individual and what we carry forward as we seek to make our own mark and contribute back to a country we all built. Harley, there's nobody that has done a better job of living out that word heritage than you have. And at a time, as you heard from the senator indicate, that is particularly perilous in many corners of the country. 58 individual acts of hate against a Jewish community in my district alone, including the desecration of a Jewish cemetery in Fall River, Massachusetts just a few weeks ago. The opportunity to focus on the commitment, the heritage that Jewish American community has across this country and the way that every one of you plays that forward to heal the world, even for wounds that are not of your creation and not of your cause, but are better because of your dedication to them. I am grateful and I thank you. Harley, congratulations. Thank you all for being here.
I could probably speak for an hour introducing our next speaker, but she has to go vote too, so I'm going to be pretty brief. I think it's simple enough to say that none of us would be here today celebrating this event were it not for Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The first piece of legislation she introduced, which was introduced in the Senate by the late Senator Arlen Specter, urged the president to proclaim a Jewish American Heritage Month. And that legislation passed the House unanimously, and President Bush, as I noted earlier, proclaimed the first Jewish American Heritage Month in 2006. I have a lot that I could say about Representative Wasserman Schultz. We work together on issues ranging from Jewish American heritage to water safety for young children. But she does all that she does and also serves not only as the majority chief deputy whip in the House of Representatives, but as a mother to 3 children who have, during her service in Congress, gone from toddler to college student. Even with all of that, she managed to find time to be a player coach of the Congressional Women's Softball Team. It is truly a privilege to call her my friend, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really, truly, not only for your effort with Ezra Friedlander to co-chair this important recognition in the United States Capitol, which is obviously the most significant democratic institution in the entire world, to commemorate Jewish American Heritage Month each and every year is so absolutely critical. And of course, given that now that we've reached the 14th annual commemoration of Jewish American Heritage Month, unfortunately, as we've just been talking before I came up here, no more critical now than it has been in modern times. We have seen such a precipitous rise of anti-Semitism, not just worldwide, but around the United States. And so the original and continued purpose of establishing Jewish American Heritage Month was to make sure that we could, over the now more than 360 years of Jewish life in America, that we could make sure that, because if you think about it, and I say this every year, but it's so important to underscore, if you think about it, I mean, most of us here probably live in communities where there are lots of Jewish people and significant familiarity with our cultures and our traditions and our history and our heritage and our contributions. But across the United States, we are less than 2% of the population, less than 2% of the population worldwide. And so most people, if you think about it, don't live around or near or even get a chance to get to know a Jewish person. And I have spoken to colleagues as well as college students who have told me numerous times that the first time they ever interacted with a Jewish person in their lives was either when they were elected to Congress or when they set foot on their college campus. And so making sure that Americans understand our rich history and the contributions we've made throughout our history in the United States is critical, because with familiarity breeds understanding and tolerance. People need to understand that we're not just a religion, we're a rich culture and a heritage with traditions that they may be unfamiliar with, but that are important, and as are our values of tzedakah and tikkun olam and gemilut hasadim. And I'll tell you that Greg and Ezra and so many of you, my daughter, this is a particularly poignant day for me. My oldest daughter of my twins is completing her birthright trip as we speak. She spent the morning on Masada after hiking up to the top of it to watch the sunrise, and I've been texting with her all day because it's also my twins' 20th birthday today. So, given that I have sent my daughter to Israel after 700 rockets were launched by Hamas into Israel in the weekend, just as they were leaving, making sure that we continue to stand by Israel as a Jewish and democratic state and our strongest ally in the Middle East is absolutely critical. Which brings me to something else important about this lunch. It always honors people who live our Jewish values. And Harley Lippman, no question, has done that repeatedly over and over. I just took a trip to Poland on a congressional delegation led by all United States senators, nearly all United States senators, all Republicans. I was the only Democrat. And it was an incredibly important trip because we were looking at many of the issues that are being, the stressors that are being impacted on Eastern Europe and Central Europe by Russia. But having been to Poland and Hungary, those two countries are living through a little bit of a revisionist history when it comes to their government's role in the perpetration of the Holocaust. And so your work, not only to make sure that Jews who were shot down and anonymous and lost seemingly forever, to make sure that they can be honored and in our tradition properly, with a properly marked grave, and make sure that, that their memory endures and that their sacrifice endures is so critical, along with so much of the other work that you have done. So thank you so much. It's so important, because that's what Jewish American Heritage Month is all about, acknowledging the significant contributions that Jewish leaders have made. And I'll just close by sharing with you, I'm not sure it's been mentioned, Jewish American Heritage Month has a theme every year. The JAM Coalition this year has chosen to honor America's Jewish illustrators. And through our illustrators, it might seem trivial on its surface to choose to honor illustrators, but our illustrators have throughout history used the lens of the accessibility of cartoons and comics like Captain Marvel and the Avengers to make sure that they could reach people on issues important to civil rights and drawing contrasts between good and evil that reflected what was going on at the time. And without those illustrators, then perhaps there's a population that we very likely would not have reached. And so I'm just so proud to be a member of the Jewish community, proud to represent Florida as the first Jewish woman to represent our state in Congress in American history, and really thankful that this event happens every year and that the growth of our outreach and awareness about our community's contributions has continued. Thank you so much.
For our next speaker, I just want to take a minute to recognize some of the members of the audience who have made special plans to be here with us this year and in past years. Here at the head table, we have Ambassador Thomas K. Yazgirdi, who is the United States Special Envoy for Holocaust Issues. We also have with us Ambassador Henriatunde Asomba of the Embassy of Cameroon. Ambassador Lin from the Embassy of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar is here. We also have colleagues of Harley's who serve on the United States Commission on the Preservation of America's Heritage Abroad, Leslie Weiss. And Rabbi Gary Zola, who not only serves on that commission, but he is my colleague on the board of Jewish American Heritage Month. So he's not as busy as Harley, but he's pretty good. And I'm getting one quick addition. Oh, and Emil Fish is with us. He's also a colleague of Harley's on the commission. I'm sorry. There are a number of others in the audience. Hopefully I'll get time to introduce you all, but we do want to keep the program moving. And it is a great honor for me to introduce our next speaker, Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. She is the senior senator of New Hampshire. She was elected to the Senate in 2008 and reelected in 2014. She served as governor of New Hampshire from 1996 to 2002. Jeanne Shaheen was the first woman elected governor of the state in its history, and when she won election to the Senate, she was the first woman senator from New Hampshire. Indeed, Jeanne Shaheen is the first woman in American history to have been elected both a governor and a senator. In between her time as governor and senator, she served as director of the Institute of Politics at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and it was here that I was fortunate enough to meet the future senator. Jeanne Shaheen was born in Missouri and moved to central Pennsylvania at a young age. She graduated from Shippensburg State University and earned a master's degree in political science from the University of Mississippi. She taught school in Mississippi and continued teaching when she moved to New Hampshire. In the Senate, Jeanne Shaheen sits on the Appropriations, Foreign Relations, Armed Services, and Small Business Committees, and is a member on the Commission for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It is my honor to introduce Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. If I sound like a frog, don't worry, I'm not contagious. I've been to a doctor. But I just don't sound much like myself. Thank you, Greg, for that very nice introduction. It's really special to be here this year again, not just because of all of you, but because this year you're honoring Harley Lippman. And I've had the opportunity to be in Harley's home. He was kind enough to support me in my races for the Senate, and I know what a difference he has made in the Jewish community, but also in politics, and trying to elect people to Congress who represent the values that the Jewish community represents in this country, for tolerance, for support for Israel, and for making sure that each generation of Americans have more opportunity than their parents had. It's also nice to be here this year because of your theme for this year, which is Jewish illustrators. It was an opportunity for us to go back and look at some of the representatives of Jewish illustrators in the state of New Hampshire. Now, as you can appreciate, New Hampshire doesn't have a lot of diversity. We don't have a very large Jewish community, but we do have some people in the area of illustrations and writers who have not only deeply impacted our Jewish heritage, but the formation of American history, society, and culture. Some of you may know Louis Loeb, who was a renowned artist at the turn of the century. His later career was spent in Canterbury, New Hampshire. You know, we claim you, even if you graduated from our colleges, you don't have to have been born and raised in New Hampshire. We like to claim you if you have any connection, and Louis Loeb is one of those people. His illustrations headlined the chief magazines of the time, including Harper's and Century, and earned him acclaim across the United States and Europe. Now, while here in DC, if you haven't visited the Smithsonian American Art Museum, you should, and see several of his works which are on display there. And of course, as I said, although he's not an illustrator, J.D. Salinger is undoubtedly a familiar name to anyone who attended high school in America. He encapsulated the struggles of adolescence in Catcher in the Rye, and he was a prominent Jewish American who spent much of his adult life in Cornish, New Hampshire. His book has been translated into 30 languages and is still read by millions of teenagers and adults. Now, as you know, in the spirit of recognizing Jewish contributions to American society, we're honoring Harley Lippman today. You know what his biography is. I'm not going to repeat that. But his efforts to promote education, to promote dialogue, public awareness, and policies that contribute to all of those things, that combat hatred and promote understanding, is so critical. And as everyone has said, especially today, when we are barely 6 months after the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in the US, and only weeks after the heinous shooting in California. We are faced with the devastating reality that anti-Semitism is not only alive, it is on the rise. And as Representative Wasserman Schultz said, it's not just on the rise in the United States, it's on the rise across the world. So it's incumbent on all of us to fight anti-Semitism and hate in any form that we see it, wherever we see it. I'm sad to say that we've seen those outbreaks in New Hampshire. It's completely unacceptable, and we can't possibly talk about progress when this type of hate is making a virulent comeback on our streets and in our communities. And that's why Harley's work and the work of everyone in this room is indispensable, because perhaps one of the most important contributions of Jewish Americans has been and continues to be the determination to make the United States a better country, whether it's through art, through education, through activism. So thank you all for all of your hard work, and I look forward to continuing this fight together.
I forgot to mention that Senator Shaheen is another reason why we would not be here today if it were not for her, because it was her office which secured the room for this event. I also skipped over, and I don't know how I possibly did this, another member at the head table, Rabbi Levi Shem Tov, who is the Executive Vice President and Director of the Washington Office of American Friends of Lubavitch. Thank you, Rabbi, for being with us. With the votes in the House having been moved up, Representative Brad Schneider of the 10th District of Illinois is unable to attend. He wanted me to pass on his congratulations to Harley and his good wishes to all of you who are here in the room. Representative Schneider's district, while not the most Jewish district outside of California, New York, and Florida, that goes to Representative Kennedy's district, it is the district where the percentage of Jewish voters has the largest impact on the margin of victory in House races over the last 10 years. So Representative Schneider, who himself is Jewish, understands the importance of the American Jewish community. At this point in the program, I do want our honoree to have a fulsome opportunity to speak to all of you who have gathered here in his honor. And before I do that, I just wanted to say something that really appealed to me personally as I learned more about Harley and watched some videos that are out there on YouTube concerning his great works. I was fortunate enough to serve on the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Council for 4 years, and the most vexing issue facing the Holocaust Museum here in Washington and Holocaust museums around the world is the inevitable decline of the survivor population. Those individuals who lived the Holocaust are now passing on, and it is extremely important that we learn their histories, that we keep them and archive them and return to them so that never again is in fact a true statement. Harley's work identifying mass Jewish graves in Poland is in a similar vein to the issues that faced the Holocaust Memorial Museum. Most of the eyewitnesses to the Nazi extermination of Jewish villages by lining Jews, Polish Jews up in front of pits and machine gunning them down so that their bodies fell into the pits and then they were covered over with dirt. Those eyewitnesses are now in their 80s. They may have been young children, and they, as much as survivors of the Holocaust themselves, have a history to tell us. Were it not for those individuals, we would not be able to find the mass graves, to mark them, and to provide, in essence, the burial with dignity that Jewish tradition requires. So I feel that connection with Harley, and I could not watch that video without tears coming to my eyes. In another video, Harley and his family, in honor of his daughter's bat mitzvah, return a Sefer Torah that had been resided in Warsaw, Poland for hundreds of years, but was looted by the Nazis. Recovered by Harley at an auction, he had it restored and returned it to Warsaw. In that video, he says, "All Jewish roads lead to Warsaw." Another issue that touched me, and I'm sure everyone in this room. My wife and I both have ancestors who perished in the Holocaust, who came from Poland. And to us, it's personal that Harley is making this effort to work with Poles in identifying those mass graves and providing burial with dignity. Harley, I cannot say enough. I already called you a modern-day superhero. Please deliver your remarks, and this is an incredibly well-deserved honor. Thank you.
Well, one thing I know, I will never, ever have to tell you what I've accomplished, because if you don't know it by now, it's been repeated about a dozen times. It never has to be mentioned ever again. So, well, what I do want to say is I want to tell you what I think inspires me, and it's other individuals. And there are many people and many aspects of people that do it, but there are a few here today that I want to refer to that really embody, I think, the best of what we believe in. Jewish values, tolerance, and compassion. So one is, and of course, these people are very modest and don't want me to speak about them, but I'm not going to honor their wish. I'm going to talk about them anyway, as is my style. So one is Jose Sanchez, who's right there. You may want to just raise your hand there. Stand up. So Jose is an American veteran, was in Afghanistan, was in combat, was wounded, came back to the United States, suffered from PTSD, and we ended up going to Israel together to meet with Israeli veterans who also had suffered from PTSD. And it was an extraordinary moment, very emotional, very powerful, of American veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan meeting their counterparts in Israel. So moving, it's, I don't know words that can actually describe that. So I'm going to tie it all together of the individuals that I'm referring to. Another person is Emil Fish, who's sitting right up here with me. It's easy for me and for people like me to talk about the Holocaust and try to make a difference today, but Emil Fish is a Holocaust survivor himself. He was a child at Auschwitz, and there's very few Holocaust survivors left, given time and given what age has done. So that's Emil Fish, and I'll, as I said, connect the dots. Then there's Norm, who I don't think is here anymore, but Norm is someone, he's retired, so this is open, but he ran our intelligence operations in the Middle East for the United States for the last 20 years, and is one of the most selfless, dedicated people you'll ever meet in your life, a man of modesty, and absolutely is all about giving back, making a difference, and serving his country. And then you have the ambassador here who's going to speak, Yusuf, as I call him. I don't know if I can pronounce his last name correctly, Al-Otabi. He's the ambassador from the United Arab Emirates to the United States. And a lot of people don't know it, but they have a Hindu temple, they have a Buddhist temple, they have a synagogue, they have something like 40 churches in the United Arab Emirates. They just appointed a minister of tolerance. They had the Pope visit. It's really the future. It's the Arab world of the future. And he really speaks to the best of mankind, tolerance, where we have our epic struggle of intolerance versus tolerance. So what they all have in common is that they all care about something greater than themselves. They all give their time and energies not to business, not to making money. Really, they've either suffered personally, like Emil, who lost his entire family. And we always talk about honoring the Holocaust, and when you actually get to meet someone like this, I served with him on the U.S. Commission, along with Leslie and Rabbi Zoller, who are here today with me. I'm very grateful for their support for my work and their belief in me on the U.S. Commission. And it just gives moving testimony to hearing someone's actual stories about what took place. But again, in all different ways, they've all suffered, they all give back, they all make the world a better place, they all care deeply, deeply about others. And in our world where making money is such a premium, it's just so inspirational to me seeing people who dedicate their lives to something greater than that, to the best, to the best of mankind. So this is what keeps me going. This is what inspires me. And I know it's often overused, this word, but I am really, really humbled in their presence. I admire them so much. I wish I could be more like them. And I'd like to think, well, I've not been in their shoes. I feel their challenges or I feel their pain and try to make, in whatever little small way I can, somewhat of a difference. But where I'm a dwarf, they are giants in what they do. So I'd like us all to acknowledge them, to have Jose and Joseph stand and just thank people who are really the best of us. Joseph, get to stand up.
Harley acknowledged the presence of Ambassador Youssef Al-Otaiba of the United Arab Emirates. He has been the ambassador of the United States from the UAE since 2008. I do want to point out that this celebration of Jewish American Heritage Month happens to overlap the holy month of Ramadan, a month in which devout Muslims forego eating and drinking during the day, and yet, to honor Harley, the ambassador was willing to come to a luncheon and, if it were me, be tempted by plates full of food, including these desserts. But that shows his dedication and his friendship and his support of the work that Harley has done. Ambassador, would you please grace us with a few words?
Thank you very much for having me. So before you all start asking why the UAE ambassador is here celebrating Jewish Heritage Month with Harley Lippman, the short answer is because Harley's a very good friend. And when Harley said he's going to be honored here, I wanted to come in person to pay my respects because that's what good friends do for each other. Our mutual friend, Norm, who had to leave because he's doing a TV interview at 1 o'clock, said, I'm leaving now, but Harley's going to be there. I said, I have to be there in person because of all the things that Harley has done for me. And this is what friendship means for us. This is what friendship means for the UAE. And as someone was saying, not only are we celebrating the holy month of Ramadan, of which today is day 8, which means we have 22 more days to go. 2019 is also the year of tolerance. We dedicated 2019 to celebrate tolerance, acceptance, inclusion, respect. Last night we hosted an interfaith iftar at our embassy for 230 people. There were more rabbis and Jews attending our iftar than there was Arabs and Muslims. And that's something we're extremely proud of. It's one of those values of the UAE. We want people to understand about us. We want people to know about us. I get very frustrated when people think or look at the Middle East as one monolithic block, because it's not. It's almost like taking a look at the United States and saying the United States is one monolithic block. We know it's not. So I want us to understand better the differences between us, and in many cases, like we do in the UAE, we celebrate those differences. We celebrate that diversity. And I wanted to be here in person to say thank you to my friendship for Harley, and to make sure you understood that part of UAE values that a lot of people don't know. I want to say thank you very much for having me, and it's an honor to be here to pay my respect to Harley Lippman.
We just have a group shot of the head table with the ambassador and with Harley. You're just standing next to Harley. Let's go. Rabbi. Ambassadors, please. Let's go. Let's look at the guy with the black shirt. Senator. Very good. Senator.
Senator Doug Jones is the junior senator from Alabama. He was elected in a special election in 2017 to complete the term of Jeff Sessions after he became Attorney General of the United States. Senator Jones received his undergraduate degree from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, and his law degree from Samford University. He served as U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama from 1997 to 2001, where he successfully prosecuted 2 of the 4 Klansmen responsible for the 1963 bombing of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church that killed 4 young African-American girls. In 2007, he was honored with the 15th Anniversary Civil Rights Distinguished Service Award from the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Senator Jones serves on the Senate Committee on Banking, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, Armed Services, and on the Special Committee on Aging. It is estimated that Alabama's Jewish population in 2017 was just over 9,500 people. Not that much bigger than the population in this room presently. But he is here with us today because it represents the true meaning of Jewish American Heritage Month. Jewish American Heritage Month does not exist for Jews to tell their stories to other Jews about how great American Jews are. Instead, Jewish American Heritage Month is founded on the premise that educating non-Jews about the contributions Jews have made to American life is the key to eradicating anti-Semitism and other bias against Jews in the nation. This is precisely why we are thrilled today to have Senator Doug Jones address us and carry the message of Jewish American Heritage Month back to his home state and fellow Alabamans. Senator.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks so much for letting me swing by for a few minutes. The schedule up in the United States Senate is pretty crazy these days, but I got to tell you, I am so honored to be here with you today, and especially to honor someone like Harley Lippman. I mean, it's awesome up here when I can see people who have done amazing work. And I see a fair amount of that in my role as a U.S. Senator. I saw a fair amount of that back home in everyday life, but to come up here and to see and to be part of a celebration recognizing people like Harley, who've done such extraordinary things for so many people, not just for the Jewish community, but really for people of faith all around the world. I'm honored to be here. Harley has taken his own success in the business world and put it to causes that he and so many others care deeply about, whether it is the young orphan children in Cambodia, to help them build a better life, or honoring the memory of the thousands of Holocaust victims who were buried in the mass graves in Poland. The list goes on, and it's not just his charitable works. It's the works in education, his work at Yale, his sought-after advice by leaders in the foreign policy and foreign relations interest around the country and around the world. Wherever there is the need for an intelligent voice of caring, compassion, and reason, people can call on Harley Lippman. And I am so pleased to be here and to honor you, Harley, for all of your work and to encourage others to please carry on. I also want to recognize Greg Rosenbaum, our Master of Ceremonies today, and to thank him and the Jewish American Heritage Month Board of Directors for inviting me here for just a few moments today. Today and this month, we celebrate the great strength that Jewish Americans bring to our nation and have brought to this country throughout history. This community's contributions are just innumerable, and its perseverance throughout history of discrimination and suffering that are a testament to the enduring strength and character of the Jewish community. Today, despite the efforts of so many, we're seeing that character on display again, because you have to have that character. You have to be reaching down, because this time we are still facing more and more rising attacks on synagogues and people of faith. You know, having grown up in a segregated South, I know well how the cycle can perpetuate itself. Divisiveness and dangerous rhetoric, sometimes, especially when it's unchecked and unchallenged, kind of begets violence. We saw it in the South, and we saw how innocent lives were taken. We've seen it lately. We've seen it really play out in Pittsburgh, in Charlottesville, Charleston, and Sutherland Springs in New Zealand. Hate drives these attacks, and the hate that it drives these attacks is all-consuming. It's empowered by leaders who fail to stand up and speak out, and that's why it's so important that you're here, that you recognize the contributions and stand up to all that is going on and all the hate and divisiveness that we see. It is because of people like you that we can stem that tide. And I will tell you, I have a personal experience here because having grown up in the South, I see it firsthand, but also my daughter, my oldest child's 35 years old now. She turned 35 last week. She went to her daycare. Her preschool was at the Levite Jewish Community Center in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the great centers, I think, across the country. She got an amazing young education there. So when she became an adult and became a mother of her own, her two daughters, who are ages 6 and 5 now, went to the JCC. We went to so many programs and so many things, but the difference is that my poor young granddaughters have had to suffer through bomb threats that my daughter never had to suffer through. There was an occasion of a year or so ago, it seemed like every other week the JCC was having to be evacuated, and those little children were having to walk silently out into the parking lot, sometimes in inclement weather. That's the kind of thing that the Jewish community is standing up against. That's the kind of thing that as we celebrate Jewish American Heritage Month, that we've got to continue to stand up and speak out. I will tell you that I am trying to lead those voices, no matter where they are, no matter who they are, that we stand up and to make sure that hate has no corner in American life. I'm really proud to be here with you today. I congratulate you and all that you're doing to celebrate this heritage, to reaffirm your support and my support for the Jewish people and all people of faith who want to make this country a better place. Thank you so much for inviting me. Harley, thank you for all that you do. Congratulations to this an amazing award because you're an amazing man. And I appreciate your efforts and all of the efforts of people in this room. Thank you for the few minutes I have. Thank you. All right, now I'm going to get upstaged. I know that.
Look at the camera. Look at the camera.
Richard Blumenthal is the senior senator from Connecticut, having first been elected in 2010 and then re-elected in 2016, when he became the first person ever to receive more than 1 million votes in a contested statewide election in Connecticut. Senator Blumenthal is one of 9 Jewish members currently serving in the United States Senate, and I count 9 because halakhically Senator Bennett is Jewish. For those, I can explain that. Before his election to the Senate, Senator Blumenthal was Attorney General of Connecticut for 10 years. Senator Blumenthal was born in Brooklyn, the son of a German father who fled the Nazis in 1935, the same year in which the Nuremberg laws were enacted. He graduated from Harvard College, where he was editorial chair of the Harvard Crimson, then went on to Yale Law School, where he was a classmate of Bill Clinton's. At Yale, he was editor-in-chief of the Yale Law Journal. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and served from 1970 to 1976, attaining the rank of sergeant. He sits on the Judiciary, Armed Services, Veterans Affairs, and Commerce Committees. He's a member on the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. This would not be a Jewish American Heritage Month celebration on Capitol Hill without the participation of our next speaker, Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut.
Thank you. Let me first say how grateful I am to be invited as I am every year, and especially to be introduced by my great friend Greg Rosenbaum. Thank you to Ezra Friedlander. I know that a number of my colleagues have been in and out today, and forgive us, it's a busy day, as most are here, and I'm very proud, really proud to be here to help honor Harley Lippman, who is a recognized national and even international leader. So thank you to Harley. Let me just say, first of all, many of you know my story. My father came here in 1935. He was 17 years old, and he came alone. He knew no one. He had not much more than the shirt on his back, and he spoke no English. It's an immigrant story, like many of your immigrant stories, and I have told some people in this room, but I want to tell it again, of my first trip to Israel as a United States Senator. I'd been before as a citizen, beginning at the age of 13. And as we came on a military American jet with John McCain and Lindsey Graham, and actually I was the only Jew among 7 senators, and as it happens, the only Democrat as well. I thought to myself what my father, who had passed away a few years before, would think of his son coming to Israel, where, by the way, some of his relatives fled after the Holocaust. And what he would think was our obligation at this moment in history, that moment being some years ago, but still very much this moment in our history, when he would sometimes tell me, you know, anti-Semitism can happen anywhere. And I would say to him, no, you know, not in America, can't happen in America. And he would say, it can happen anywhere. Because hatred is not confined to the borders of any country. And of course, in my lifetime, then, as an adult, I've seen it. I saw it in the military. We've seen it in the terrorist violence, most recently in Pittsburgh, but actually that's the only the most evident or obvious dramatic aspect of it. So keeping our Jewish heritage and our identity in this world as vibrant and vital as ever has more meaning for me every day, more meaning for me as a father of 4 children, 2 of whom have served in our armed service here, and more meaning whenever I come to this group, because you are working and advocating and fighting for this cause, our heritage, our identity, our faith, to protect all that we hold dear and brings us together, regardless of where we live in this country or around the world. Harley Lippman has done that in his work in Poland, as you well know, in his reaching out to other countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia or the Pope. His work here, and I know personally about it because I was one of the leaders of the Taylor Force Act, where he was so instrumental in providing advocacy, constraining funds that go to potential terrorist activities. And thank you for that work, Harley, in particular. We all have different ways of doing it. We all have different activities, different favorite causes. But the work that you are doing in this organization means so much to me personally. The bonds between this nation and Israel have to be bipartisan. If we allow them to be become politically partisan, they inevitably will become weaker. And so I reach across the aisle as a member of the Armed Services Committee for the funding that goes to Israel's defense in a military sense, and I can report to you with pride that those military-to-military relationships are strong, as are the intelligence activities and the relationships there. But it is because we work at it. It takes work. It doesn't happen coincidentally or accidentally, like the best marriages. And so I am here to say thank you to every one of you and the many who are involved in this cause who are not here today, and most especially to Harley Lippman. There is an old saying, there's no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit for it. And that's the way Harley has lived his life as a business person, as a philanthropist, as an activist. Thank you for being here today, and thank each and every one of you for the great work you are doing. And I look forward to being back with you on future occasions and to be invited to support your activities wherever you are from. Thank you so much today.
It's a fact of life in Washington that more people tell you they are going to come to something and don't show up than tell you that they can't come to something and do show up. A little while ago, I gave an introduction to Representative Brad Schneider from Illinois' 10th District and said that he sent his regards because of the vote scheduled in the House. He was going to be unable to join us. But lo and behold, we have here in the flesh Representative Brad Schneider. I'm not going to repeat the introduction because he's heard it before, you've all heard it before, and I'd like him to say a few words to us and thank him profusely for making the effort to join us despite what's going on in the House with votes today.
Greg, thank you, and Harley, congratulations. I wanted to be here in person because this is really important, because our story is truly and only in America's story. I will offer the consideration. I know this is a beautiful room on the Senate side. The cafeteria in Longworth is much more convenient. I can promise I'll be there. But no, it is wonderful being here, and like the senator, my story is an immigrant story. Only in America can a grandson of a woman born in Kiev, the grandson of a man born in Brest-Litovsk, the grandson of a man born in Vilnius, rise and come to be representing Illinois in the halls of Congress. It's a privilege and an honor and a responsibility I take very seriously every single day. My grandmother's story is the most interesting one. Is her family left Kiev in 1912. They made it across the continent. They arrived in England. And thankfully, for the continuation of the story, she was 5, her brother, my Uncle Willie, was 3. He got the flu, so they did not board the Titanic and waited a week to make the crossing. But their story could have ended there. Their story took them to Colorado for a very simple reason. An uncle, William Chetko, had come earlier and lived in a little town called Lamosa, Colorado, and he was their sponsor. But their story could have just as easily taken them to Palestine, because it's very important, and I want to make this very clear today. The Jewish people's link to Israel doesn't start in 1945. Jewish people's link's 3,000 years old. The Zionist dream doesn't come about because of the Holocaust, as awful as that was. The Zionist dream comes about because in the 1890s, Louis Dreyfus faced a trial that was a sham. It was a monkey trial. And Theodore Herzl took that dream and went to the capitals with Chaim Weizmann and others to make the case and inspired the dream, created the hope that came to be realized in 1948. Serving in Congress, I know one of my greatest responsibilities is ensuring the security of Israel and the close, integrated relationship between the United States and Israel. It is imperative that we keep that relationship strong, unbroken, and permanent. And that's what I see my role, one of my greatest roles in the Congress to be. But with respect to Only in America, I took pride reading the news, and maybe you saw it. It was in a number from JTA and other pieces. A Swedish-American woman astronaut is going up to the space station with a cosmonaut on a Russian Soyuz rocket. She's going to be the 13th American Jew to go into space. Only in America. We have 2 people in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Greg, this is for you. You can't answer the question. Can you name those 2 people in the Hall of Fame? Hank Greenberg, right? There is not anything that's barred to us. Senator Blumenthal talked about the rise in anti-Semitism, and we have to take it seriously, and I take it seriously every day. I'm proud to be a trustee of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Hi, Stacy. This is something that is one of my greatest responsibilities as well. And whenever I see anti-Semitism in any form, in any place in the United States or anywhere else around the world, I'm going to stand up and speak against it. But that doesn't mean that at this moment in this country, there is no better time to be a Jew in the world than where we are right now. We are proud to be a part of the fabric of this society, a fabric of this country, and to be here in government. So Harley, thank you for all the things you do, the leadership you've shown in fighting anti-Semitism, the leadership you've shown in creating those memorials in Europe. They matter. We can never forget. But we also need to keep our eyes on the prize and look forward. Together, as a community, we are strong. We are as strong as we have ever been. And together, as a community, we will always be strong. Thank you very much.
Well, we've reached the end of our time in this room together, though we have not reached the end of Jewish American Heritage Month. We're only halfway through it. I would refer you to the next to last page in the brochure about Jewish American Heritage Month, where you can find resources to learn more about Jewish American Heritage Month and about the theme for this year. I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to thank all of our speakers. I especially want to thank Harley Lippman for all the great work that he does. And I hope you will join us next year when I have a sneaky suspicion that the theme of Jewish American Heritage Month will be Jewish contributions to women's suffrage on the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote in the United States. Thank you.
When you make the dedication, you give me the